Prempe, you, Samson, from Professor Azar, from Max Logan, and a few others whose names maybe there's no time to mention. And by the way, I do the same thing in medicine. I am a fairly good doctor, but I learned a lot, even now that I'm practicing, from doctors that I know. When I was in Cape Coast, Professor Deborah, Harold Aite, Uku, Dr. Anthony, now Professor Jipon, Professor Frimpong Boateng, even my sons who are in medical school. Last week, they were having a discussion on neuroanatomy, and I listened in admiration. So I come to my interest in the law with a lot of veneration and love. Now, to come to what the Chief Justice is trying to do, I am very troubled, not by her motives. I don't know her motives. I'm sure she means well, but by her awareness of the political situation we are. We are a few months to an election. We've had a lot of problems with our judiciary and its reputation. A lot has been done that has left a lot of bitter taste in the mouths of a lot of Ghanaians. And we can recite some of the decisions. The election petition, in which they wouldn't put Jane Mensah on the dock to talk, the shocking change of EC members with the connivance of the Chief Justice and other members of the Supreme Court, removal of Auditor General Domilovo. The perception increasingly that our judiciary, and particularly the Supreme Court, is biased, with warnings from Kandapa, who, even though an MPP member, expressed the worry of many people. Since then, other people have weighed in. Former President Mahama, Mr. Opoku, who used to be Kufuor's security minister, all those people have weighed in, and 6 months to an election, all of a sudden, we hear that in a country that has 15 Supreme Court justices for a population of 33 million, compared to 330 million Americans with only 9 Supreme Court justices. We need more of them, and the Chief Justice doesn't even bother to follow the process laid down by the Constitution. I smell a rat, and I smell a rat because it will contribute to instability in the country. I think that our judiciary needs significant reform, but those reforms needed do not include just adding to the numbers of Supreme Court justices. If the work is too much, the court, or for that matter, Parliament, more appropriately, should look at the U.S. Judiciary Act of 1787 and 89, which set out the parameters of the American judiciary. The first thing, for example, is that we should cap the number of Supreme Court justices. Second, we should define the appellate process, including the picking of panels for Supreme Court cases. We should bring more transparency. And by the way, our Parliament can do a lot of these things that have the Constitution is silent on, and it will bring a lot of stability to our judicial process. I am very worried about the reputation of our judiciary and where we are leading it, particularly in the teeth of an election that is only a few months down the line.
Right, so you just raised the comparison with the Supreme Court of the United States of America, which caps its judges to the apex court at 9. Now, there is a factor you will be urged to consider and see if the comparison is a good one. In the US, you have a federal system of government that is practiced. Each of the 50 states has a Supreme Court, with the exception of Oklahoma and Texas. These have the 2 Supreme Courts, one for civil and the other for criminal cases. So if you check properly, the total number of state Supreme Court judges throughout the United States of America is 344. What do you say to that? No,
what I say to
him.
that is that
and again, as you try to advocate, their jurisdiction is narrow. The Supreme Court of Ghana's jurisdiction is wide. I was trying to calculate with a friend of mine, Dennis J. Jumo, of Dennis Law, and we were counting as to about 9 different jurisdictions. Some people have counted 7, some have counted 8 jurisdictions, but in the pure sense, about 9 different jurisdictions. Elsewhere, they have just the appellate jurisdiction, and even that you have to come by leave. That means that not everything goes to the Supreme Court. Like in South Africa, they've also capped it, I think at 11 or so, but they have a constitutional court. And then they have the Supreme Court constitutional, they have the other one for appellate jurisdiction. So what will you say about that? In terms of the numbers, that was my first question.
Sure. There's an interesting question, but if you study the evolution of the American judicial system, it was not always like this. From the Judiciary Act of 1787 to be the Supreme Court to rise circuit, in which, apart from deciding Supreme Court case, they served as judges who rode around deciding cases. So the system has evolved. And eventually, part of why their jurisdiction and their work load has become manageable is what you alluded to, granting certiorari. Granting cert means the Supreme Court doesn't have to take every case. For example, you need to obtain cert to have 4 of the 9 Supreme Court judges agree to hear a case. So every year they hear approximately about 70 cases that they think portray conflict from the appellate courts, or questions of original jurisdiction, things that are important in law. For example, this year they talked about the Chevron. Having said all that, I just say all this to say that there are ways that you can make our court system more efficient, and I've mentioned some of them. Clear and transparent appellate process, having timelines in the decision of cases, granting certiorari so that the court doesn't have to take all cases. So there are ways of dealing around that, but I take your point that there has to be some refinement. But having said that,
and you raise an important